Welcome to Reporter's Notebook, where we talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the stories breaking on their beats. I'm Jim Antle. I'm joined today by White House reporter Haisten Willis. Haisten, President Biden, because of the Hurricane Ian, has been in a situation where he's had to cooperate with somebody who he's kind of been at loggerheads with for the past few months, and maybe at some point in the future, should they face off in a presidential race. Talk a little bit about the dynamic between the president and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
Yeah, there's been this back and forth story, non-story going all week about Biden and DeSantis. On Monday, there was news about the hurricane coming out, of course. It's hitting Florida. And someone had asked if Biden had spoken with DeSantis. It turns out they had not. They were asked again about it on Tuesday. They still had not spoken. All of a sudden, this became kind of a big story. Why haven't they spoken? And of course, Ron DeSantis is a rising star in Republican politics. He could be a presidential candidate in 2024. He could potentially face off against Biden in 2024. So that's what the speculation ended up being. Are there politics behind this? Does Biden not want to be seen talking to DeSantis, making him look, more presidential and leading Florida through the hurricane, all of that kind of stuff. Both parties appeared to want to kind of bury the hatchet of this about this on Wednesday. They both came out and said they had spoken to each other Tuesday night. They both complimented each other, complimented their responses. DeSantis said that the Biden administration did a good job with handling the hurricane. Biden was complimentary of DeSantis. But that still hasn't really stopped the questions. Corinne Jean-Pierre was asked Wednesday, after they said they had spoken, she was still asked about the situation 3 more times. Biden was asked about it another time on Thursday. So it doesn't really want to go away. People, I think, are just very interested in what's going on with Ron DeSantis right now. And despite this being a very major hurricane, that's a persistent story that hasn't gone away yet.
Right, because, hurricanes are maybe not supposed to be a political issue, but they've played pretty prominently in politics in the past. Hurricane Sandy became a major issue for then New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, who had presidential aspirations. Hurricane Katrina obviously was very bad for George W. Bush's presidency. So these things sort of can be an issue both for a president and for an aspiring president. So how this is handled is really going to have at least some impact on both of these men's future.
Yeah, I think so. As far as I can tell, there haven't really been any major storylines of things being, mishandled or anything like that by either party yet. It's still pretty early, so that could emerge. I think both of them right now want to definitely get past this. I think they will be happy to get back to arguing about, policy issues, things they do disagree about, LGBTQ issues, immigration policy, those kinds of things. But right now, they seem to be focused on the hurricane as it's happening.
Especially given that there's a lot of concern about the death toll potentially in Florida as this storm hits. So it's going to be something that they're going to have to work together on, and we're going to have to watch to see if the response, how well they work together in this response.
Yeah, there's a Republican strategist I spoke to the other day who was talking about this. He thought it was kind of a silly story about had they spoken or not. He said, well, what are they going to do? Are they going to go, is Biden going to fly down to Florida in the middle of a hurricane to do a photo op with DeSantis? Right. But yeah, you're right. This will probably go on for a while. I think the cleanup effort will be going on for a while. So eventually, potentially, they will meet in person, and who knows, maybe they will eventually spar over a couple of aspects of the recovery process.
Sure, during the building collapse that had happened in Florida earlier in the Biden administration, when the president went down to tour that, they did appear together. So the cleanup effort may be a bigger opportunity for there to be a joint photo op, but that'll be a little more awkward than it was at that time because there have been a lot of exchanges between both of these men since then.
Definitely. I think a lot of people will be very interested in seeing how these two interact with each other. Whether perceived or real, people will be looking for any kind of tension between them.
So the president had what some are terming a senior moment, but what others are saying is a totally innocent, easily explainable thing when he appeared to be calling out to, well, the White House has confirmed he was calling out to a deceased Republican lawmaker, played a role in a conference that was held at the White House. President wanted to thank lawmakers who had been involved, and he included her very briefly and was sort of looking for her to be there. And I think at this point, that was what it was. But the White House has kind of come under scrutiny for how they've decided to explain it. They didn't really say that the president misspoke or made any mistake.
Yes, I was in the briefing that day that, yes, like you said, he was at the Hunger Conference. It was something that Representative Jackie Walorski had helped set up, and he was taking different representatives who had done that, and got to her, and he said, "Yeah, where's Jackie? I thought Jackie was going to be here," and looking around, appearing to think that she may have been there. So it's something that I think could happen. People forget things. She did die fairly recently, tragically, of course. But the White House was, as you said, afraid to come out and just say he misspoke or he had a momentary lapse or whatever. I was in the briefing, and they went with this line that she was top of mind. That he's going to see her family on Friday. She was involved in this conference, and she was top of mind. And the reporters in the room, for the most part, were really not buying this line. They said that doesn't make sense.
Right.
Top of mind. There were at least 4, I think maybe even 5 different reporters that kept trying to grill Karine Jean-Pierre about this, and she just kind of kept repeating the line, well, she was top of mind, and who knows why. Presumably they could have just said, yes, he momentarily forgot, he's so sorry, he's so embarrassed. But there have been questions about Biden's mental acuity and his age ever since. So that may have been why they didn't want to come out and say that. They just went with this top of mind thing.
Right.
But one reporter eventually just kind of blurted out. He said, well, I have John Lennon top of mind almost every day, but I don't go around looking for him.
Right.
And things kind of got a little crazy there. There were some reporters yelling, we need a better answer than this, than what you're giving us. Things eventually calmed down, and Jean-Pierre, I guess to her credit, as a spokesperson, she stuck with her line.
Right.
But it definitely raised, I think, maybe more questions than it really answered.
Sure. It's a difficult position for a spokesperson to be in, because obviously you're not going to give any answer that indicates any frailties or flaws in the person that you work for. But the explanation didn't really make sense on its own terms, because if you're getting ready to meet with the family, if you're really thinking about this person, the basic fact that they're deceased would probably be top of mind.
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive,
Yeah.
right? If she was indeed top of mind, and especially if he's meeting with her family just 2 days later, presumably the fact that she had, in fact, passed away would also itself be top of mind. But that's what they said, so who knows?
So now, obviously, one of the reasons why they're hesitant to concede any error here, President Biden has been known to do these sorts of things, even in his younger days, asking a man who is in a wheelchair to stand up and be recognized, sort of recognizing that he had made a mistake there, saying, oh God, and telling him to sit back down and whatever. These things have happened, but the difference now is that shortly after the midterm elections, President Biden's going to be 80. The oldest president prior to President Biden, Ronald Reagan, left office before his 78th birthday. So this is sort of uncharted territory for a president at this age. So there's going to be scrutiny of that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's going to be more intense than ever, the scrutiny of Biden and the statements he makes going forward. As you said, he's called himself a gaffe machine. He was making gaffes, back in the 80s. He had issues with his first presidential run in 1987 for the 88 cycle, due to some gaffes he made even back then. But right now, he is about to turn 80, as you said, and there's just a lot of close scrutiny about that. And again, the White House not wanting to admit that he misspoke about Jackie Walorski is evidence maybe that they're aware of this as well, and they really want to tightly control this message if they can. He, of course, also does not do many interviews. He's done less than half as many interviews, I believe, as his 2 most recent predecessors. So there's very much an effort to kind of tightly control what he says and when he says it.
And the most recent interview that he gave, at least a sit-down interview that produced about 3-4 major headlines that the White House probably would have liked to have avoided.
Yes, it was a good illustration, unfortunately, I guess, of why they probably don't want him to do too many interviews. The biggest one was probably when he said the pandemic is over, even though there are several major policies that rest on the pandemic actually existing. Federal government employees are still working from home. The student loans cancellation rests legally on the pandemic existing, and that's up to $1 trillion, depending on which estimate you're looking at. So that itself was a major gaffe, and it illustrates, as you're saying, the issues that they're having with him.
So another message that the White House would like to tightly control is on the economy, and that's going to be a big issue. Most polls say the dominant issue in the midterm elections. The White House has a pretty strong message that things are good economically. Is that the right message to have right now?
Well, we'll see. I think the voters, I guess, will decide that when they go and weigh in themselves in the midterms. But I guess like all presidential administrations, they're emphasizing the positive. They're talking about low unemployment rate, They're talking about GDP growth, which is still a little bit positive. They're emphasizing the things that are good in the economy. But the issue for them is that the negatives, I think, are more visible than some of the positives. If inflation goes up, and inflation is still very high, you see gas costing more, you see eggs costing more at the grocery store. If unemployment rate goes down, you don't get a second job, right? So those things can be more obvious to people. And so they risk, of course, maybe seeming out of touch if they're saying, well, the economy is so great, and people are saying, well, I see costs going up, I see my real wages going down.
Mm-hmm. Well, and a big problem is that not only now are they emphasizing the relatively low unemployment numbers, or in some cases very low unemployment numbers, relative to inflation, the president himself has kind of said some things that seem to downplay or minimize inflation, which might be a riskier message to be sending.
Yes, he has started focusing recently on the month-over-month inflation numbers, which do look low, especially compared to the year-over-year. The month-over-month in July, as he said many times, was 0. The month-over-month in August, I believe, was like 0.1. He called it hardly an inch. But the year-over-year is still above 8%, which is still near a 40-year high. You know, memories of the early 80s and Paul Volcker and all that. So again, it depends on if people are going to buy that message about inflation.
They might not be able to afford to because the prices are too high.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you, Haisten.
Thanks.
You can read Haisten and the rest of our political team's coverage at washingtonexaminer.com.